Hi, my name is John Behnke, and I'm here to talk about my new arrangement entitled Angels We Have Heard on High. It's for SATB choir, congregation, and organ, and it has optional parts for 3 to 6 octaves of handbells, as well as an optional orchestra. Yeah, I said optional orchestra. That includes brass, 2 trumpets, a horn, 2 trombones and tuba, woodwinds, flute, oboe, clarinet, and bassoon, strings, violin 1 and 2, viola, cello, and double bass, and last but not least, timpani. But remember, I said optional orchestra. It's not necessary at all. In fact, the original score here, the SATB, choir, congregation, and organ will sound wonderful. And if you want to, if you have a bell choir, you can put the bell choir with it. This is the separate score that's here. It's 984411. Now, if you wish to add the instruments, there's one more score that you have to buy. That's 978032. And it's a reproducible score, so you can duplicate the parts that you need for the instruments that you have. And you can use whatever instruments you have at your disposal. The piece was commissioned a number of years ago as a dedication to, as it says, the vibrant music ministry of First United Methodist Church in Manhattan, Kansas. Years ago, I played a hymn festival there and got to know the fine organist, Mr. Dan Myers. The church is right near Kansas State University campus. So yes, they have musicians nearby to assist in this vibrant music ministry. The piece starts, this Carol of the Angels begins with a fanfare, and then the choir and the congregation sing stanza 1. Stanza 2 asks the people's question, which is, shepherds, why? Why are you rejoicing? And this stanza is original music for the choir alone. And when the refrain returns, the shepherds and the angels both reply, Christ is born, Gloria. This leads to a modulation, a step higher to F major. And stanza 3, this closing stanza, has a descant with an F being the highest note. And yes, sopranos, I was thinking about you. At the close of the piece, there's a coda, which brings the fanfare back again for the choir, and it finishes with 4 wonderful ending glorias. On the CPH website, there is a glorious recording, which does employ the optional orchestra, all the instruments. Even if you don't buy this piece, I would encourage you to listen to that recording. It's wonderful, and it's well worth it. My hope and prayer is that this arrangement of the well-known hymn, Angels We Have Heard on High, will enhance your Christmas celebration. I thank you for listening to this video, and may God richly bless your music ministry.
My name is Lauran Delancy. Today I would like to talk to you about my handbell arrangement of the Christmas piece, From Heaven Above to Earth I Come. This is a level 3 piece for 3 to 5 octaves of handbells and optional hand chimes. The hymn this piece is based on is truly a treasure of our rich heritage of hymnody. It is believed that Martin Luther wrote these words for his young family for Christmas Eve of 1534, and it first showed up in print the following year. Luther originally paired his text with the popular musical riddle of his day called a folk game called a garland. A boy would sing the refrain and then pose a riddle to a girl. If she couldn't solve his riddle, she had to give him her garland or wreath. The first stanza of From Heaven Above to Earth I Come is remarkably similar to the refrain of this garland song. Only instead of posing a riddle, the angel speaking in this first stanza essentially says, "I'm going to tell you all about it." Luther's hymn was very popular. Even though it was originally paired with the folk tune, by 1539, the words were paired with the tune that we know it as today. It is believed that Luther himself wrote this tune to go with his text. There are 15 stanzas in this hymn in the Lutheran service book. Stanzas 1 through 5 are the angel proclaiming the news of Jesus' birth. And then the rest of the stanzas are our response, along with the shepherds, to the birth of the Savior of the world. I want to read to you the first stanza. From heaven above to earth I come, to bear good news to every home. Glad tidings of great joy I bring, whereof I now will say and sing. This is the great joy that I wanted to portray in my handbell arrangement. My piece opens with this bright and festive peal that keeps coming back throughout the piece and can be heard in different voices throughout. There are swings in the battery and the bass bells until the battery eventually takes over that peal, brings the musical idea down, and then it just builds and builds and builds until the first time we hear the melody, starting in measure 9. The middle statement of the melody is on the chimes in the bass clef with these sparkling eighth notes twinkling above in the treble clef. The treble eighth notes are LV and reminiscent of that festival, joyful peal at the beginning, but softer and more fluid. Even though there are a lot of eighth notes for the trebles in this section, the texture and patterns with the LV make them entirely anchored and very approachable to play. Coming out of this section, we once again return to that festival peal that breaks into just a hint of joy to the world. This is my favorite part of the piece. I just love this absolute bursting forth of joy at the news of the Savior's birth. Finally, the last statement of "From heaven above to earth I come" is a fuller accompaniment with the melody back on top. There are more moving eighth notes in the accompaniment as the whole ensemble bursts forth in joyful proclamation together. The piece ends with the same joyful peal as the beginning, with swings in the bass clef and what I like to call power chords in the lower trebles, driving that excitement forward. Da, da, da. The whole thing builds with a C6 shaking into the final chord. And I've included a note with that last chord that it should be played and then swung randomly as the sound dies away slowly. It's kind of my way of saying the story hasn't ended. The joy goes out to all the world, and Jesus' birth is just the beginning. I hope you will enjoy ringing "From heaven above to earth I come."
Hello, I'm Donald Rotermund, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity to share some comments with you that relate to a new organ collection from Concordia, Christmastide, Fughettas. There are 14 settings in this collection. When I prepared and began to think about this little project, two concerns surfaced in my mind that I thought I would respect. One was that the settings would be very accessible, and the second one would be that the settings would include the full tune, the complete tune of the carol or hymn. What prompted the accessibility idea was I thought these are selections that will be used during the Christmas season. That's a time when most organists have more activity and involvement than usual, and probably less practice time than they would like. I also thought that if they were very accessible, sight readable for many, they would help organists with somewhat less skills, particularly if the pedal were not too involved. So the pedal notes, by and large, are longer note values. There's one particular exception, and I'll mention that later. Regarding the whole tune, there were two ideas that came to me. One was that if the organists have an interest in playing organ stanzas, they could use these better if they had the full tune. So the congregation, the listeners, could follow it. And for that reason, the tunes, in part, are not highly embellished. Extending the tune or including the complete tune gives them a little more length and perhaps permits them to work a little better as voluntaries. The time for these probably is 2 minutes plus, a little bit more. There are two that are a little less, and they have some repeat options if you choose to use them. There are several smaller features that I'd like to mention as well. All of the settings begin with several measures of introduction that precede the first entrance of the hymn tune for the use as a Fughetta theme. These measures are optional if you chose, and they have several other potential uses if you'd so desire. One would be if perhaps before the last stanza or verse of the hymn or carol is sung, between the penultimate stanza and the last stanza, you might like to put a little bridge or interlude. The Germans call this a Zwischenspiel, an interlude that has musical relationship to the tune itself. You could use them for that. At the same time, if you chose, perhaps at the end of a service where you don't need to introduce the whole hymn, partly because it's familiar and time might be an issue, you could just lift these early measures and use them as a brief intonation. Similarly, the ends of the settings, almost all, include the last phrase of the hymn or the carol. These, I think, you could extract and use as a coda-like ending if you so chose. Especially if you would use the beginning, the introductory measures, or the complete setting as a prelude, concluding with a coda-like group of measures that relates also to the setting thematically, might be useful to you. Concordia has helped us very much in that they have made 3 of these settings available on their website. If you go to their website and look for this collection, you'll be directed to 3. The first of which happens to be the last setting in the collection, on the charming little tune, Tempus Adest Floridum, Gentle Mary, later child in a lowly manger. For that setting, I would suggest you consider some more feminine sounds, pleasant flutes perhaps, or strings as the accompanimental part, and for a melody that's on a separate manual, perhaps an 8 2 2/3 flute, or 8/4 2 2/3, possibly with a mild tremulant. And if these aren't available, or you prefer a pleasant mild reed, could be another prospect. There's a little musical germ idea that I've used throughout the accompanimental part of the settings. It's a pair of oscillating diatonic pitches that extend for a little time. And these can suggest a rocking idea. The second tune that they chose is a staunch German choral. It's less familiar than some of the others, but a wonderful, lovely tune. It's very solid, and a substantive text that goes with it. I chose to include that in part because there is a limited number of settings available on that tune that's accessible, and that this might help organists if they use that tune or wish it to relate it to the tune if it's used in a service with some thematic material. For this being a little more of a masculine type tune, I would like to offer a suggestion of consideration of at least a 4-foot principal or octave in the organ part, surrounded by some other stops that would complement that particular voice and give strength to it. The third is a charming French little carol, which you'll know as Noël Nouvelet. It's the one tune and setting that uses groups of eighth notes in the pedal, and that's dictated pretty much by the tune itself that has that grouping in the melody. For this one, I would like to suggest something that has a higher pitch. Perhaps 8 and 2-foot flutes might work if the two are pleasant and clear, or perhaps an 8-foot flute with a 2-foot principal. If you have a little more of a choice available, possibly an 8 and 4-foot flute with a 1 1/3 mutation. Admittedly, this tune setting will probably take a little more practice, but if you take the time to learn it, there's a bonus, and you probably have already thought of it. It would work nicely if you chose during Eastertide to support the Easter text, "Now the green blade riseth." The registrations, though, by and large, are more suggestions or ideas rather than prescriptive to be used as they are, because all organs have somewhat differences. Acoustics entering in makes it even more important to choose stops with care. If you look at this setting with interest, I hope that you'll find the collection, as I indicated earlier, accessible, adaptable, and flexible, that it might serve you in a number of different ways. If you choose some of the settings during the Christmastide season, I hope you find that they are helpful in connecting and relating to your worshipers in a meaningful way that help them follow along in the service and the text. Thanks again for viewing this video and for the opportunity to share this new collection with you.